have made it back, and once again, the fifth member will be here shortly. So we're joined tonight with Tony Rodrigues, Ileana, Star Traveler, Jason Rice, and Penny Bradley, all
Hi.
Secret Space Program veterans, and we're gonna be discussing a little bit about what it's like to start remembering these things that you've been through, and like how do you figure out, like, am I just imagining that, or was that real? Like, what's fake, what's real, all that stuff. So I don't know. I guess I guess we'll start with Tony since you're up there in the top left. What was it like when you were first like coming to with these memories and stuff?
I don't remember exactly when they started. I mean, I think that a lot of memories, since there are two of you on a timeline, I think that I remembered a lot of things as they were happening to the other self, at the same time. There's, it's a complex thing, but there was a breakthrough moment, like it was April of 2015 when they all kind of hit me, and when I realized it was when Randy Kramer came on and explained how the time dilation worked and how they would put people back, and then I thought, the memories that I did have, I thought there was no time for that to happen. There was no time for me to have a whole career on a spaceship, So I just brushed it off, But when I saw that, and like I said, it was April, and I internalized it. I went, oh my God, that happened, and they all kind of, and once I accepted the ones at the front, then the rest of them came in, and it was terrifying, because they kept coming, because it went on for months,
Right.
like that, where I'd wake up and go, oh, that happened too, and I didn't believe it. That was the other thing, is I thought, I didn't know that I was going crazy. Like, they were real. It's just like remembering your child going to school. It's just like a normal, any other thing you remember from your past.
Mm-hmm.
So I was freaked out by how extraordinary it was. And for me, when I was able to prove it to myself by finding the places on Earth that I remembered living, when I went on Google Earth and found the house, and literally the street, and looked down and went, oh my God, that's real. Like, I remembered it first and then found it. So it's hard for me to use that as proof, because I told my story and then, put that out there. There are a few places on Earth I'd like to go and take somebody with me to, as a witness, for me to know my way around it. And I've never been there. So
Mm-hmm.
there are a few places left that I can do that. But that is kind of what the experience was for me. I know it's different for most people. I think a lot of people are taken and they're off Earth, so they don't get to re-find places they lived in a 20 years
Right.
term back. So as far as I've heard, I'm weird, unique in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fairly unique. I haven't heard anything else. Anybody
But I
else come
did
forward
find
with
that stuff, and then so I wondered. I actually went there. That was April of 15. It was, I think, September of 16 that I went to Seattle, and I traveled there. And the whole time I was going there, I thought, maybe I'm not going to remember. Maybe when I get there, it's not going to be the same as. And it was the opposite. It was I had freakishly accurate memories of it. It was just like somewhere I used to live, and I knew it like the back of my hand, the whole area. And so with that, I kind of moved forward with talking about the other stuff, because if those memories were that good, then the memories of the space service had to be pretty accurate too,
Mm-hmm.
from the thing. So it gave me a little bit of confidence, but it was almost sad. I almost really regretted it, that it was true to me. You know what I mean? Like, I proved it to myself. It's hard to prove it physically for everybody else, but if anybody's spent any time or money investigating what I've said, it all keeps. Actually got private investigators working on some things, and everybody keeps coming back to me with the same thing, saying, every time I find something that's coincidental, it's coincidental in favor of what you said, not against it. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a fountain of that.
So, like, how did that affect you emotionally? I mean, I guess, like, when you first started, were you all the pieces? I mean, what?
Sometimes it was a little bit like you might expect.
Right.
There were times I was coming home from grocery shopping, and by myself, and pulled over on the highway where you're not supposed to pull over, and bawled my eyes out. You know what I mean? Because I remember, because it dawned on me what really happened.
Mm-hmm.
I just had that moment, and you're talking about the whole gambit of the trauma stuff, and then you think about like combat scenarios and the things. You know what I mean? On top of losing touch, losing people that I loved. You know, that there were people that I had close relationships with. That when you imagine somebody from your child, imagine your best friend from kindergarten that you forgot about, and then remember that person and go, oh my God, where are they now? You know what I mean? Like that stuff all churned to the surface. It still happens. I think I spend a lot of effort trying to forget nowadays. You know, trying to get on with my life. You know, I kind of swallowed the pill, and now I'm ready to move on. But it had moments, you know, exactly like you might expect from going through something traumatic.
So, Ileana, how about you? What was it like when you first started remembering?
Well, I've always had memories that I wasn't human, that I was a star seed and a star traveler. Like, I've always had the memories that I came from somewhere else in the universe. In my teens and childhood, and I was born in the Ukraine, so I saw different spacecraft, UFOs, what we call them here. So this is what I grew up with, and I remembered being abducted by reptilians from the age of 2 to 10 and being infested with nanite technology, and it was supposed to kill me, but it didn't. It just ruined my autoimmune system. So the black drowser reptilians and Sharab Invictus, green reptilians, those were my earliest memories without any hypnosis regression or past life regression. But then I got into shamanism. My teacher was Leonard Howell. He's a native Métis shaman. He taught me past life regression. And that's as well as a little bit of hypnosis. And when I combined the two together and started doing the regression sessions, I remember the SSP stuff that I had done as 60 and back with the planetary corporations on Mars, the basis in the cybernetic labs. And I remembered all the horror from the cybernetic labs that they build out cyborgs, splice human body parts with cyborgs, do soul transfer, they take your soul of an SSP acid, they put it in a cyborg, a clone, stuff like that, and also that they basically grew mutants, genetically modified mutants, vampires, and I remember being trained as an assassin and killing these vampires because they were mutated, and they were sent out on other planets to basically decimate the planets, and SSP assets were sent to destroy these mutants because they'd gone rogue. So our own planetary corpse on these bases created these mutated, genetically altered abominations, and we were sent out to destroy them because they were destroying other solar systems and planets in our solar system.
Still knows that.
So basically that is what I remember, and I'm not even 60, I'm only 33, but I have the vision of a 60-year-old. And when I went to the ophthalmologist, they told me, you have forward vision, that of a 60-year-old. You need glasses. I'm like, well, and my health is also crap. So I've had I had Neuralink implants, which is partly nanite in my brain with these filaments and fibers of gold and these triangular implants, 4 of them. And the SSP was still spying on me. Those Neuralink implants were left in my brain even when they discharged me in 2016. So they were still spying on me where I was going because I was still doing planet travel on my own. I'm able to beam out myself in a light body and go wherever I want to different planetary systems. So I was still doing that, and they were spying on me through the implants, and then I decided to take them out because they were leaking gold, and basically I have a now white matter lesion in my brain as a scar from getting the implants removed. So that's what I remember, and I also disclosed the Mars basis locations that I was on publicly, and I got the attention of somebody who went after me for that. I'm not going to name names because that's not important here. So that kind of put me on the map as being this famous person for false SSP disclosure, supposedly. But I stuck to my guns and kept at it, the disclosure, because I knew I was telling the truth. I had hypnosis regression, so I knew what was my truth and what was not my truth. What I had been accused of, I didn't do. I didn't fake my SSD memories or experiences. That was real. And I kept putting these presentations out and just kept at it, and never sought fame. I didn't want to be on TV. I didn't want to be on radio shows. I just wanted to disclose what I remembered. So that's what I kept on doing. And a lot of Jason's testimony really brought back some sad moments for me about the cybernetic labs and what they created and used their own soldiers to fight these mutations, to pit us against what they made. So that's sad for me that was done. But, you know, these programs are ruthless. So that's...
So, Jason, how about you?
Well, I would say that the recollection process had started pretty early on, and without any frame of reference, because of the compartmentalization. It was just so complete, at least in the beginning, that you know, I'd have to say that at first it was like, oh wow, okay, that was really odd, and then I go on about my business and go about my everyday life, and it wasn't until a large number of them had started stringing together in which I was able to start making some sense of it. You know, prior to awakening and really coming to terms with what it was, I was in a very similar boat to what Tony had mentioned a while ago. Yeah, no, denial, you know, river in Egypt. There's no way that I was involved with anything like that. And you reach a point where the overwhelming evidence is there, in which I started doing searches online, and I started finding these images, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you gotta be kidding me. And I had an experience in the fall of 2016, and I happened to be in North Carolina, and drove by one of the places that I first went in, and remembered it, and that was one of the recollections that I'd had. And it was just one of those, oh my gosh, moments. I know this place. I recognize that. There's a street right up here, and you turn left, and there's that. And it was from the recalled moments from my SSP entry. And so, you know, the recollection that you go through, I think it's safe to say that when you first, for me anyway, when I first started making these recollections, to try and talk about it, you're not a whole person when you're remembering some of these things, and it's definitely not one of the healthier moments. And so it takes time to get yourself, at least for me, put together where you're able to communicate these things, because there's a lot of trauma involved and associations with, okay, this happened and that person died, and that person didn't die very nicely either. And so you start remembering these things and then just trying to communicate it and come to terms with it and continue with your life. And you still have bills to pay, and you still got to go to the grocery store, and you still got to put gas in the car, and trying to maintain some semblance of balance. And the life balance, it truly is a challenge when you have, at least for me, having these memory recollections and trying to fit it in. And okay, well, how do I tell this? How do I disclose this to people? You know, how do I talk about it? And coming to terms with it as a self and getting to a healthy point where you can do that. You know, the memory recollections, they're not all pretty, and they don't all happen at one time, thankfully. Because I think that, at least speaking for myself, I don't know that would have been the healthiest means for me to recall, because I don't know that I would have been able to process everything if it had flooded in at one time. Thankfully, it didn't. It happened over well, it's still happening. So, I mean, it's a non-ending process. And I'd say that, you know, the process of remembering is going to be different for every person, and there may be different triggers. Never thought that it would be triggered from watching a movie, and lo and behold, it happened. And never thought that it would be triggered from going to visit some random place in North Carolina. And guess what? It happened. I never thought that it would be triggered from buying a Groupon and going hang gliding. And guess what? It happened. So, you know, there's just no way of being able to write out okay, this is how it's going to happen, and this is how you're going to remember, and these are the things that you're going to go through. There's no way, I think, of predicting it.
Unpredictable by nature. I mean, we're
Yes,
talking
very
about,
much
you
so.
know, memories and stuff that were, you know, people, they went out of their way to try and take them away from you. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the memories that came back for me was of a training mission down in Antarctica where they had us using our intuitive empath abilities to navigate. We didn't have any compass, and they took us several hundred miles away from the base, dropped us off in the middle of nowhere, and said, okay, find your way back to the base. And the ship that they dropped us off at was a landmark, and it happened to be an old freighter from the early 1900s. And I had very, very clear mind picture of it. And I didn't know what ship it was. And so I started looking, and lo and behold, I pull up the SS Schwabenland, and it was a dead ringer for it. And the thing that really strikes me as odd is that supposedly the British Navy had stockpiled all the chemical weapons in Europe on that ship and then sank it in an undisclosed location.
Right.
And so there's no trace or track of that ship,
Funny.
except I saw it.
Funny how that works, right?
How that works.
Kind of like how they, strategically sunk all the U-boats with all the mercury in them, and then left them, left them right where they needed them.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
So Penny.
Hi.
Welcome back. She popped in earlier in the day. So, what about you? Hey, how's it going, Lou? I see him in the back there.
Yeah, Lou's listening on headphones so that we don't get feedback. How about me? When I was sent back to Earth when I was 4 years old, I had absolutely no idea who my family was. I didn't speak very good English. I had been speaking German the whole time I was gone. And it was the summer before I started kindergarten. And one of the first things I told the kindergarten teacher was that Martians had left me on the doorstep. And she told my mother this wasn't a real popular concept in 1959. And my mother beat the holy crap out of me, and then told my father about it, and he left me where I couldn't walk. That goes along with what Rochelle said earlier about her father belted her. This was rather common in the 50s in America. And I remember as a child, I remembered how to fly, and I was small. So we have some really intense winds in Central California, especially in the winter. So I would take my coat and spread it, kind of like hang gliding, and I was small enough that the wind would pick me up. My mom beat the crap out of me for that too. I came back with psi abilities. They didn't erase them all. And my father was a Church of Christ preacher, and he was absolutely convinced that I was possessed. And so anytime that I talked about the entities that I would see and interact with, or the possible futures that I was trying to warn him about, I would get the crap beat out of me. So I learned to stop talking about it. But when I got into school, I had memories of the science that I was taught in Shula. Shula on Mars. For those who don't know, I spent 25 years on Mars as part of the German Martian militia, and 25 years after that on a freighter as a navigator in Nachtwaffen. Navigators function by being merged with the technology and take the ship interdimensional with them. So it is a psi ability. It's not something that just anybody can do. It's not tech. It's tech plus psionics. And so I had some amazing skills when I was on the other side, and some of those stayed with me. I do have a firewall here, so I cannot just blow people's heads up like I do there. So, I was,
Oh, what happened?
Cut it.
We lost you. We're losing you, Penny.
okay, I was small until I hit high school, and my modem is blinking, so I'm going to be in and out.
Okay. Well, we got you now, so go continue.
Okay. I have memories of being picked up by the CIA and taken to various SRA rituals. Their stated intention was that they had modified me with so much Draco DNA that they were testing me to see if I would shapeshift. And if I had, they would have killed me on the spot.
And just to add, if for those of you watching, if you don't know what SRA is, it's satanic ritual abuse, correct?
Yes. So that is part of my total picture. I met. So I met him at one of these rituals. So I know he is a red Draco, and he is not some spiritual being. He's an ET. And he's a druggie. He's addicted to adrenochrome. And so I knew all of this all along. I wanted to be an astronaut. Well, in those days, girls were not allowed to be astronauts. I wanted to be a pilot then, and in those days, girls were not allowed to be pilots, although they had let Amelia Earhart, but she was rich and bought her own plane. I kept hitting this wall that girls in America in the 1960s were property. I worked hard, got a full scholarship to Cornell. I was going into engineering. It was the first year they were going to accept women into their engineering program. I had a full scholarship. I was 17. My father said no, turned it down. There was not a damn thing I could do to change that. So I lost my scholarship and ended up going to junior college and marrying a preacher who also beat me every time that I talked about the paranormal side. So I just sort of let it slide. But I was having bits and pieces memories all along. Well, in 2011, I met this guy on Facebook. And I knew we had a connection, but I was ignoring it because I was living with Lou. And Lou and I went through a bad spell, and I ended up in 2013 going and meeting this guy. And at Langley, during my mind fracture, I had been number 7, and he was number 5. So that's what our connection was. He remembered being number 5. And this was before my memories were restored. I remembered being number 7, and this was the connection we had. But he put it into terms of twin flames and all that bullshit. one of the first things he did was he was taking me past the NSA base that's in Maryland. And he says, well, I can take you in there. And I go, how? And he says, well, I work for them. I'm like, what? You failed to mention that. He said, no, I didn't. I told you that I was a Russian translator for the Air Force. I work for the NSA. I'm like, fuck. Oh, fuck. What the hell have I gotten myself into? And so the closer he gets to the front door, the more I panic. And I finally had a full-blown, complete panic attack. And he decided to not take me in. Probably a good idea. So later on that day, he started using my personal remember code. And so where y'all are talking about not getting it all at once, mine was all at once. Big lump. Everything mixed together and all in German. So I got pictures, and I couldn't understand enough German to know what they were talking about because the altar wasn't merged. Well, we're still working on that merging, and she's learning English faster than I'm learning German. And so I'm getting, over time, more of an idea. But this was in April of 2013, and I spent 3 years doing research to figure out what the hell I was remembering, because it was so muddied together. I had bits from the ship, I had bits from Mars, I had bits from Langley, I had bits from Montauk, I had bits from the jump gate, and battles on Mars, being eaten by spiders on Mars. I had all of this all mixed together with no explanations.
It's like, where do you go with that? Like, how do you even begin sorting that out?
That was exactly it. And I would just sit and I was online. I'm disabled, so I had the time to do this. I'm on Social Security disability, so I didn't have to go work and make a living and pay the bills. Those were already taken care of. So I'm sitting here online, and I'm just doing research 12 to 15 hours a day, every frigging day. That's why I can tell you who else says this, because that's how I sorted out the puzzle pieces. Now, I know some of you have been really good about not mixing your pieces with other people. I didn't have that luxury. I had to know what the hell it was. And so I finally got it sorted out into a basic structure. It was Tony that told me to write it down into a timeline. That is actually really, really awesome advice. Thank you. So what I did was I started writing it down so that I had an order. Well, at that point, somebody got pissed off at me and they started shooting at me with directed energy weapons. And by the third time I got shot, I figured they're eventually going to kill me. And so I had to think about what my options were. And that was when I went public. And I may not have chosen the best, most famous, out there people. What I did was I chose the people who believed me. And that's what I did. And I got as much out as I could to begin with. And I've had an NSA agent since then tell me that that was the smartest thing I've ever done, because it made it where if they kill me, they verify my testimony.
Yep. Probably saved your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've been shot 7 more times since then.
Oh,
But
shit.
I'm still alive, and I still make general sense when I talk, and I still have days that the tears run down my face, and I can't stop. Yeah, like Tony, I've done the side of the road sitting with my eyes out. And I've had days where I've taken a baseball bat to a tree stump because I was just so angry. I had to do something with that rage because it was eating me alive. And I now spend about half the day every day doing counseling with other people with their memories. And most of what I do is just listen to them and reassure them they're not batshit.
Hey, Penny,
Well, a lot of times that's what people need.
Real quick, Penny, you mentioned getting attacked with directed energy weapons. What was that like? Can you just real quickly, can you give me a quick, brief summary of that? I just haven't heard that part of your story.
It's the first time Lou and I were in Virginia City, Nevada. We were visiting his daughter, and she took us to the local tourist trap. And we walked into a clamper watering hole. Some of you will know what a clamper is. And it's a redneck men's drinking club. In the Western United States, they are responsible for all the historical monuments along the highways. That's their legitimate claim. But what they really are is a men's drinking club. And it's your redneck blue collar guys. And both of Lou's daughters are married to members. So we went to the Clamper watering hole, which in Virginia City is named Bucket of Blood or something like that. And we went in there and we went past the bar, and there was something blocking me from actually looking at the bar. I was psychically blocked. I could not even look at it. And so we went to a table, we sat down, Lou went into the men's room. And on his way back, I had ordered water bottles, and they charged $5 a bottle for water.
Sounds like the airport.
Yeah. Exactly. But as he came back from the bathroom, we got hit in the back, or I got hit in the back and he got hit in the chest. The same shot got both of us. And it was like being hit in the back with a log, except there was nothing physical there. And there were no bruises. And it was electronic, and it made my heart hurt. I had to take a nitro after.
Wow. So
I've had attacks, so I do have nitro.
okay, so Marie, you there? You getting all the audio?
I can hear you now.
Yay!
Awesome. It's a show. So, what about you? Do you want to tell us a little bit about what it was when you started gaining memories back?
Well, yeah, I'm the baby of the group as far as remembering. I've got a bunch of big nets that I still have to string together. But there are things that I have memories of from when I was 3 years old. Adult memories of when I was 3 years old. Wow. And trying to bring that forward, because certain things trigger you to remember a little more and a little more and a little more. And so, yeah, my first memory though was when I was 3 days old, and I was adopted by a family, and it was not legal adoption. They went to my mom's apartment where she lived and picked me up, and I remember my grandmother, my adopted grandmother, was holding me over her shoulder in the back seat as we're driving away, and I'm looking at her and I'm seeing my mom, and I'm calling my mom, and I could hear her psychically calling me, and we just drove away. That I never got that adoption cleared up till I was 28 years old.
Wow.
But what they put me into was the most draconian household anybody could ever live in. You know, very well-to-do household. Dad had plenty of money, and it was. I can't even begin to tell you how restrictive it was, and I was aware of it from the time I was really small. I'd watch my parents, and they'd watch TV, and they'd become like Father Knows Best, or they'd become like Lucy and Desi, or All in the Family. It was like a progression as I'm getting older, and I'm watching my parents kind of change their personalities to fit the programming on TV.
NPCs.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've always been kind of aware, but I have huge black holes in my child memories. But the things that I remember are crystal clear. Like Tony sparked me with being shocked. Now, in this life, I've been shocked many times because I worked in electronics. But I think that came from some training elsewhere, because I never went to college to get into engineering and design power supplies. But I remember being in a room with maybe 6 other kids, and we're all sitting, you know, almost like lounge chairs, and we're all hooked up and sparked up, and the guy would hit us again and again and again with the electricity. And finally, before I'm going to die, a very more mature voice came out, and I go, "No, I'm not going to let you kill her." And so right as the guy's gonna flip the switch again, I don't know what I did, but I yelled at him, and I put my hand out, and the guy crumpled. And I think I gave him a heart attack. And I think they gave me drugs to put me right out from then. And that's the end of that vignette. I think I was used definitely in the satanic realm, you know, with rituals and things. I definitely remember being trained with reptilians. And from the time I was really young, really small, it was a recurring dream. It was a dream about going to a place where I had to avoid the bubble man. And the bubble man, if you look at him and he sees you, he can stun you right there. You're not going to move, and then of course he's going to eat you. And if he hears you, he can hunt you. If he sees you, he can stun you. So you can't get past this guy. I had to get past this guy. I did this over and over and over and over again, and I was always able to get around him and to get to my goal. Other people weren't that lucky. But
okay, so
I found out where the place was. I was watching Lorena McKinnon at the Alhambra, and I can tell you something. If I went there, I could take you through every corridor, every arch, and past every pond where this being that we had to go past. It happened at the Alhambra. So that is like another indicator of where I was trained, I think, and for whom I was trained, because I was used to manifest things. We used black tantra, red tantra, and we definitely made things happen. And that has happened in my real life too. Not like that. In a way, I manifested almost the death of someone just by being able to use that force. And it really scared me. It was like, wow, where am I getting this kind of power from? And it was from going through what I've went through. Now, in this life, I've known electronics since I was with Art Bell. He kind of introduced me to building a television, and from there I knew anything I really wanted to know about electronics. So I went into electronics and started as a C assembler. In just a couple of months, I became a tester, and while I was testing things, I figured I may as well fix them instead of send them to troubleshoot. I'd fix them. So I was after 6 months of testing, they put me in troubleshoot, and I started finding design flaws, and I ended up as an engineering tech with a Russian engineer and redoing everything. I think that came from my SSP background. Another thing in this life that I'm really good at, and I've always been really good at is genetics and being able to communicate with different animals, different species. I used to train birds for the Wild Animal Park down in San Diego.
Huh.
So some of my remembrances are of creating hybrids.
Do you have any memories of working with alien engineers during your experience as an engineer in the secret space program? And if so, do you remember like overcoming the difficulties, the cultural difficulties, working with an off-worlder?
It was different. It was different. You have to really be able to get in their frequency. Once you're there, you're connected and everything runs smooth. But you have to really get used to the energy that the different beings bring out, especially the ones that you create that you've crossed things.
Mm-hmm.
Because once you cross things, then you have a being that has to deal with two different parts. I mean, two very different purposes and mindsets and all of that. It's complex.
Can I ask you a question, Mary?
Yes.
Did you ever create mantids insectoid hybrids in the SSP program as a genetics specialist?
I don't know. It's possible. But it was more like we were doing more human hybrids.
So, like to
especially with reptile. I have absolutely no memories of grays. None.
How about reptilians?
Yes.
Because I'm just sensing something like reptilian insectoid energy from you, like that you were mixing, splicing, something like that.
I could have been.
Okay.
So I'd like to discuss another point here. Now it's often been said that when you're waking up, it feels like you're losing your mind. So at some point there has to be some sort of triggering event that kind of solidifies it for you. Like, I'm not crazy. This shit actually happened. I guess we'll start with Tony. We'll go back to Tony again. What was that point for you, Tony?
You mean like the moment of?
Like what was the triggering event that made you just totally finally be like, I am not crazy, this shit is real?
Oh, you mean after I already internalized it and was thinking about it?
Yeah.
It was when I found the house on Google. On Google, I went to Google Earth and I found the house, and I was able to zoom in on it pretty close, and it was like, I remember they had there was a horse stable, and there was a special shaped pool there, and there was a statue next to the pool we always used to get running and jump over, and that was all there. And it was all on Google Earth. I could zoom in, public stuff, and I went, oh my God, believe me, I cursed a lot. I was just floored that I found that. And then immediately, in the same afternoon, I went and found the town in Peru as well, Puerto Tawantinsuyo, Peru, and I remembered the airport being about a mile from the town. There was a stretch of road. We took a van from the airport to town, and it was exactly how I remember it. And that was when I went, oh wow, this is real. This is a real deal.
You were really tuned in for that same day.
Yeah,
Wow.
well, you know what I mean. Well, this was all right after. Like I had a big chunks happen that flooded in, and I sat on them for a couple 3 days. I think it was 2 or 3 days where I just woke up and went, wow, and I still was remembering, and just trying to internalize it all. Like, what do I do with this? And I thought, well, I remember the Seattle. Like I remembered it a lot. So I went on Google Earth, like I said that. I said there had to be something. If it was, if my memory, if this is right, I have to be able to find it, and I did. And that was the moment that I couldn't brush it off. I really couldn't unexplain that. And that, for me, that it was bittersweet. It was a double-edged thing, because on one hand I was happy that it made sense what I remembered, and on the other hand it meant that everything I remembered happened, which was bad.
Yeah, totally. Well, you've been on our show before, and your whole story, and it didn't sound like a pleasant experience to me. I'm sure anybody who heard it would probably agree with that.
I've been able to still find some things about the original the trauma-based mind control class that I went through, and subsequently right after it was like a remote viewing schooling, and I've been able to find documents on the declassified. I would say that to Mary about her time that she remembered when she was young, going through being electrocuted or being shocked. She have a look and try to pinpoint the year and go to the CIA unclassified online library and see if you can't find anything in there that will connect the doc. I've been able to turn up some stuff about the funding and the program that I went through. I'm still working on it. I'm going to put it into a talk later this year.
That's a good idea.
Awesome. Yeah, that is.
Look that up.
That'd be rad.
I'm still finding stuff. Still finding real stuff.
Yeah.
So, Ileana, what about you? What was the moment that finally solidified it for you?
It was during December 2014 when I got my hysterectomy, because I never thought periods were normal for women. I had hemorrhaging all the time when I had mine. It was painful. So when I had that removed, I had more hypnosis done, and I realized that most of the nanites that the reptilians had implanted had been in my uterus. So when my uterus and my cervix were removed, the nanites were removed with it, and then I'm like, most of the SSP memories started flooding back in about the Mars, that I had been taken to Mars after I was in the Monarch program. So that's when it flooded in that monsters are real. I worked in the cybernetics labs on Mars. I helped to create hybrids. I helped to create mutants, grow them in the regen tanks. Vampires. I always believed that vampires, werewolves, witches, shapeshifters were real ever since I was a kid. To me, that was normal. So, and that's created in the labs, the vampires, the mutants, the genetics, whatever, all that splicing and dicing. That's something I did, and it's horrible. Also, wearing the smart suits. While you wear that smart suit, it has nanotech in it, nanites. So when I wore it, I didn't have a period on the bases. And I'd ask other women, well, why don't we have a period? What's going on? They're like, while you wear the smart suit, you're not going to have a period, or you're not going to go to the bathroom. Your biologicals are all modified. So you're not going to go to the bathroom while you're wearing the smart suit.
Wow.
So that's your uniform. I remember wearing a silver smart suit, like a cat suit. It's made out of nanite tech. While you wear it, you are basically, your bodily functions are all frozen almost. So you're not going to go to the bathroom, big or small. And the women don't have periods while you wear the smart suit. The moment you take it off, everything's back. And I'm like, wow, this is interesting. So I never thought it was normal for women to have periods while I had one. So that for me was interesting. And then I had the hysterectomy, and then all the memories started flooding in. I guess because of all the pain, everything was blocked concerning the SSP stuff. I also had memories of being on the moon. So them having like these dome-shaped bases connected to each other. So that was interesting. That was grayish white. And they have more bases, the moon ones. Also, they're responsible on the moon, but they have other bases in the solar system. Most of them are run on the moon, and they have connections to other bases in the solar system. Lunar Operations Command or something like that. Or Lunar Space Operations. For me, it was Lunar Space Operations, not Lunar Operations Command. So I use different wording for it because their main bases are on the moon, but they have other bases in the solar system. So for me, it's Lunar Space Operations, according to the hypnosis. And from that point on, I really was interested in what I was remembering. So that's why I decided to study the hypnosis, the shamanism, past life regression, because I also had past lives as an extraterrestrials, not just plural, and that's why the SSB took me, because I have psychic abilities, and also I have the ability to see the future and the past, like precog abilities. And actually, I've been able to manifest things that I've seen as future events that actually happened to me. What I saw actually manifested the way I'd seen it. So that's why I was taken into the SSB. And they stuck me in a lot of different job roles, as a cybernetics tech, as a linguist, piloting ships or prepping ships with my Neuralink implants to have connections to the computers on board. That was interesting. And I was also given a lot of drug serums to change my physical appearance to be different extraterrestrials, to look like different ETs, humanoid ones, to participate in meetings and negotiations. So that was interesting because the ETs would not accept a human into the negotiation process. The SSB asset who went in had to look like the ET itself, otherwise they'd be rejected. So they had me do that, and I was physically changed to look like another being that was blue, with long blonde hair, like pale white hair, not even blonde, pale white as ice, with light blue skin and blue eyes, and 10 feet tall, from 8 feet to 10 feet tall, but the only thing I refused was I wanted to look like a humanoid ET. I never wanted to look like anything that had 4 legs, 3 eyes, or, extra appendages. I said no to that. Because, so for me, those were the strangest memories and experiences, but I always thought it was real. Because I grew up in a family that was quite accepting of folklore and the supernatural. Like, my mom is psychic herself, so she doesn't think any of this is weird, and I've always talked to her about it. My dad is a little bit skeptical, but then he always says, well, aliens do help us from time to time. So I grew up in a family that was not like, no, this can't be real, this can't be true. So my family was more accepting of the things that I talk about, the supernatural stuff from when I was a kid. And I always was interested in vampires and werewolves and the supernatural and the paranormal. I always thought it was real. To me, magic was real, witchcraft was real. I'm a hereditary witch. That was one of my past lifetimes, and I studied white light magic, witchcraft. So along parallel to the shamanism at the same time. So I always thought like you could manifest things from the spiritual world into the physical world, that's possible, and it is, because I've done it. And I've used magic. So they teach the esoterics, the planetary corporations teach us esoteric stuff on Mars when we were on the basis, and spirituality. There has to be spirituality, because Penny and I did a show with you, Don, on that. And like sex
that was a good
magic.
show.
Yeah, bloodletting, sex magic, that's all part of it. And the genetics, modifying SSB assets genetics as well, the smart suits, the holographic medical pods, regeneration tanks. I saw all of that stuff in the cybernetic labs where I worked as a cybernetics tech. So technology for me and interacting with it is pretty normal. I can psychically interact with any technology, especially on the internet.
Yeah.
I can find weird things on the internet that nobody else can, rare stuff, and pass it along information. They had me do a lot of research on these bases, and that's actually what I ended up doing in this life on Earth, working in research. So I'm pretty good at research and technology, and that's basically the trigger for me was the hysterectomy, getting, no longer having a period and remembering wearing a smart suit and not having a period while wearing the smart suit. So I'm thinking it's strange that women have periods. I mean, some of the reptilian races their females don't have periods, and I also remembered that. So I'm like, that's interesting. I was quite shocked that when you do the spacewalk, right, when the astronauts do the spacewalk, they sort of wear diapers still on the ISS.
Yeah.
I was like, I always thought that they had smart suits, which they don't, because that's not the tech that they had. So that was shocking to me to find that out last year.
Would have been handy to have a couple of those smart suits today, I bet.
Oh my god, I could have used one of them so bad. I could use one right now, actually.
Get you guys a couple cat suits for Christmas.
Real time saver.
Oh,
Yeah, well, I mean, that was a shock to me. You still wear a pad on a spacewalk? What? I thought they had smart suits, and that's not true.
So,
Yeah.
Jason, how about you? What was your turning point?
Well, I'd say that one of the culminations for me, where it was, okay, I've got these memories that I've recalled, and I've got some normalization by doing research and finding out, okay, I'm really not losing my mind, that there is a secret space program. And the culmination of all of that came to a point where I had a very emotionally moving memory that came back, in which at the end of it, I had recalled some technical specifications that were very exact and that were a complete engineering spec for a particular tech system. And for me, that was an oh wow moment, because it allowed me to also make a whole bunch of other connections for the from being involved in the secret space program, as well as the false flag aspects of the secret space program, because there were a lot of red flags from the very beginning. And there were a lot of things that, okay, I had questions about, but suck it up and soldier on, don't ask.
Right.
That's above your pay grade. And so you end up with a lot of questions over time. And it was the memory in which I was able to make a whole bunch of connections, and it was an aha moment. Mm-hmm. And for me, that was definitely a large epiphany, because it was a wow moment. Mm-hmm. And of course, I had to go through the processing of, okay, being involved with all this and my own part in it. And even though I was ignorant of it, that still doesn't negate the involvement in it. Mm-hmm. And so, having to clear out those energies, as well as, coming to terms with it on my own personal level. So for me, that was the memory that really triggered it. And that was one. And then, of course, there's been others since then, but mm-hmm. getting over the initial, okay, wow, I was involved in this false flag operation on 3 different worlds, and wow. And so just coming to terms with that was a large hurdle for me to overcome. Mm-hmm. And then coming to realize it. And then initially I had, of course, a whole bunch of guilt associated with that. And then being able to clear those energies, because they're not really productive for what my mission is, mm-hmm. and for what I want to try and do now. And so that was a great first step, was realizing it, and then working past that and on forth from there.
Very good. So, okay, who are we on next? Penny. How about you?
Hi.
And you guys are gonna have to excuse me for 30 seconds. I'll be right back. I need the smart suit. I can't do it. But go ahead, Penny. I'll be right back. Excuse me.
Okay. The trigger moment when I knew it was all real was in May of 2013. I had had almost 2 weeks that I had spent with number 5, and I was home back in California, and I'd been home a little over a week, and he had an asthma attack followed by a heart attack, and then he was in the hospital for a week, and he was dying. And something psi ability rose up in me, and I screamed, no, just loud. The neighbors heard it. Now, I'm in California and he was in York, Pennsylvania, so we're talking 3,000 miles away. And I knew he was trying to die on me. And when I screamed no, I felt something from my core just come up. And he was in the hospital in intensive care, and he had been in a medical coma for almost the entire time he'd been in. And about an hour later, his sister is posting photos on Facebook about he's woke up, he's eating, he's trying to talk, and all this good stuff. Well, he's since been murdered, so we can't. I mean, I have the photos I saved the photos of him being raised. But this was an ability that I apparently had while I was in Nachtwaffen. And it's an ability that I still have because the night before Don had his surgery last summer, I used it on him. And Don is still with us. So this is...
Hi guys, I'm still here.
So, yeah, that was what told me this shit was real. And so from that point forward, I took it very seriously. And that kind of drove, what the hell is this? Because I didn't know anybody else that could do this. And I had a QHHT regression in January 2015, but I didn't ask SS questions. I was asking more paranormal questions because along with getting my memories back, I also became multidimensional overnight, and I have not slept since. I have been lucid sleep ever since April of 2013.
Huh.
And so I was asking questions about why was that happening, and what was I at soul level, and why did I have these abilities that other humans don't. That came back that it was because they said in the hypnosis, I was told that I was a product of military laboratories, that they had injected reptilian DNA into me, that, you know, it's the group that's now DARPA, that they had done this to me, and that's why I had these abilities that other humans don't. And when I asked which reptilian group, I was told, you will believe us, but you will freak out, and we don't think you're ready yet. Now, I went in, I had 10 questions, and I got told I wasn't ready yet for 4 of them. So that was, in a lot of ways, I felt it was unproductive, but in other ways, it was very productive. So it was worth the $200 I spent.
Whew.
You know, that the lady had been trained by Dolores Cannon, and she's really good. And we had it recorded. But the questions are not about SSP. The only one that was actually related to what I was remembering was the one about, you know, what caused this, and it came back that it was basically the precursor for DARPA. Now, I've had 2 more regressions since then, but they were for specific things. One was with James Rink, and he had an artist that he had commissioned to draw him as a super soldier. And I had seen him as a super soldier. At that point, I was the only person who had publicly stated, yeah, I remember seeing him. So he wanted me to talk to the artist. But when he started the regression, I went into the blood programming danger mode. And he had to back me out. And we ended up finding a different point to go in, and I did get the artwork done for him. But by that time, the artist was really mad at me. But it took a long time to get there because I had so much destruct programming. Apparently, I have self-destruct programming on every altar I have, and I'm from the generation where they gave us 2,200 altars. So I've reintegrated 30 of them, but if I'm up against 2,200, I still have a long way to go.
I wonder if that's even possible to integrate that many altars, and would you even want to?
Peter from ACIO that works with James Rink says it's not a good idea for me, that I have some alters that should not be reintegrated. But he wouldn't go into any details. He just absolutely freaked out that I was even considering reintegration and refused to talk to me any further. I mean, he freaked. He started stuttering. It was not pretty. He told me about a couple of alters that I was not pleased that they were part of my mix. And since he brought them up, I've started having times that I piggyback in them. Because I've reintegrated 30 of them, the boundaries are thinner. And so I wake up, I'm not in charge of the body, but I'm there witnessing what that altar is doing with the body. Some of them are in clones, some of them are in this body. I've witnessed some really horrific things. I have one altar that is an assassin for the CIA, and she uses my body, and I have woke up while she was slitting someone's throat. And she walked out of the place literally covered in this man's blood. And nobody stopped her. And I'm still freaking out that she walked out of a high-rise covered in blood, got into a taxi cab, went to an airplane, and she's covered in blood the whole time, and no one stopped her anywhere along the way. And it's like, what the fuck?
That's pretty crazy.
So these are the kinds of things I wake up. I can be sitting on the computer and suddenly I'm in something else that's going on. I believe it's the same timeline. It's just I'm in two places at the same time because of the way the time travel works. Some of them I'm putting clones like Tony talks about, and some of them I'm in this body. And so it's when I'm piggybacking, I can tell which is which. And I think this is getting back to the original question of how can you tell? How do you know? And a clone body doesn't feel it.
I'm sorry, you broke up right at the end of that. You said a clone body doesn't what?
Doesn't feel right.
Okay.
It doesn't. When you're in your natural body, this is you. You feel every bit of it. When you're in a clone body, it feels like you're a squatter.
How does it feel when you're in a cyborg?
I have an altar that is a cyborg, and she has just animal level awareness. All of her higher functions are actually the AI in the robot body. And so it's like when you're drugged and you just eyes are open and you're registering things, but there's nobody's home. It's like that. I Penny would rather that particular altar would be destroyed, because that is no way for a person to live.
Right. So, okay, I guess we'll move on to Marie, or Mary, or Marie. How do you want? It's not Margaret.
Marie.
It's not Margaret, right?
No, it's never Margaret. You dreamed that one up.
I did.
Oh.
What about you? What solidified it for you that you weren't just losing your mind and you actually there was something behind this?
Well, I guess it's come in stages. And one of them was being abducted out of my room. You know, I went to bed one night, and right as my head hit the pillow was instant paralysis. And I knew they were coming, and I knew how many there were. And I also knew that I was supposed to be asleep, that I'm not supposed to know that they're coming, but I know they're coming, and they know I know they're coming. So I position myself in my bed like I'm sleeping, but I see myself from I'm seeing things from 5 different angles when she walks in the door. And I mean, she doesn't open the door, she comes through the door. It's a blue light, and she comes in, and it's a woman, looks kind of like me, in a white jumpsuit. And she's laughing because she knows that I'm faking being asleep, and I'm just, you know, doing what I have to do. Well, anyway, she came up and she put her thumb right here, and then her hand all the way back to the back of my head right here, each fingertip. Okay, my hand's not that big. There's no way I could do what the size of her hand did. And then I was out. The next morning, I had little burned scab marks at every point that she touched. And not only that, when I went out to hop in the car to go to the store, the battery was dead. I had 3 other vehicles plus a tractor. All of their batteries were dead. So
That's pretty interesting.
yeah, so that really made it real for me. Then my last real thing, besides recognizing Penny as someone who got me out of a bad situation, a couple of years ago I got really sick, and I mean I couldn't walk very far. I mean, if I could go 50 feet, it was just incredible to go 50 feet, and I was throwing up. So I went to the hospital. They put me through an MRI. I ended up being diagnosed with celiac disease, autoimmune. I've got cysts on my ovaries, cysts on my uterus, cysts on my kidneys. I've got ulcers. I've got 2 hernias. Both of my femoral arteries are clogged. The one in my left leg is 100% clogged, but I grew a vein up above the main place that's clogged up with a big clot all the way down. When I look at you girls and what you're going through with your physical things, and I lived on a farm. I ate organic. Okay, I didn't eat crap food. I didn't live the kind of lifestyle that you would think would give you all those things. But yeah, so that just kind of brought it home to me that is something that's pretty common for anybody that's done a 20, 40, or 60 and back. So that in itself gave me a real moment, just the same as the batteries being dead in every vehicle.
Yeah.
On my place when that happened.
That, that's something like you hear about. People talk about UFO sightings and stuff, close encounters with their car will die. The electrical systems and it will fritz out and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. I kind of want to change the format up a little bit. What do you guys think about asking each other questions? Sound
Look,
like
everybody
chaos?
smile.
Sound like chaos?
Everybody smile.
I think I like that. I think I like it. So I mean,
Sure. I'd say why not?
all right. Well, so I guess what we'll do is, since there's so many people, it's kind of hard I can't even think of the damn word. Anyway, referee maybe, I don't know.
Direct.
So direct. There you go. So Tony, I'll just tell you, we'll work on the same order that we've been, and we'll just have you fire a question to one person that you may have a question for.
You're gonna have to come back, man. Give me just a minute to
Okay.
think about
All right.
it.
We'll start with Elena then, or Ileana. Excuse me.
Okay, this one is for Jason. I had watched one of the CD shows, right? And you were talking about werewolves. Do you think the programs engineer these things and have them come and attack planets and have the assets defend the planets to conquer that? Do you think that could be a possibility?
Well, that's a great question, and I'd say that I've asked myself many times, where do I think the origin of these werewolves were? And they had to have had facilities that were capable of not just producing, but warehousing, probably on the order of millions. So it would have to be someplace off planet, because I don't think that there'd be any place on Earth that they'd be able to warehouse and create and make these things, as well as testing and all of the integration and everything that's necessary to get one from a lab to fully functional. So my thoughts are that they were probably somewhere off planet.
Wow. So it's to the scale of where you don't even think they'd be able to do it underground here on Earth?
I don't think that it's impossible that they couldn't do it underground. It's just a matter of, okay, well, how do you get them from underground to a ship?
Right.
To get them, okay, now they're getting deployed. And so my thoughts are that it would probably be easier for them to do that from a base that's either on an asteroid or some moon somewhere that's in the middle of nowhere, that is way out in the back of beyond, that they're not going to have prying eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Sirius base, possibly?
What's that?
Sirius base, possibly?
Probably out system. I don't even think it would be here. I think it would be somewhere far back and beyond, way out in the middle of nowhere, where there's no inhabited planets or habitable planets around, would be my thoughts. Someplace that they've got all to themselves where they could create them. Now, I can tell you that I've seen corporate types on planet collecting samples or taking entire cadavers with them. And they were humans, and they were certainly from Earth. And so there's a 100% chance that those samples that they had taken made their way back to probably dozens of labs. And what they did with them there, probably improving either terrestrial medical applications, because just the being able to integrate the type of machine and biologicals that they did for both the werewolves and the spider alien like that was on Planet 2. It was not an experiment. It was a very well developed program, both of them. And they were both very, very advanced technology in being able to bond the different systems that they did. And so being able to reverse engineer that for medical applications, for transportation, communications, regeneration, there's a whole range and host of things that can be used and pulled from those systems that they would be able to explore and create. And not just on the positive side, but there's lots of nefarious applications for it as well.
So, Jason, do you have a question for anyone? If you needed some time, we can come back. I'm sure somebody else will think of something. I know you're not really as familiar with this group of people as they are with each other, so it might be a little tough for you.
Wait, give me a moment, and
right.
let me think of a
Well,
question. I'll come
Penny,
back.
I know you-
I had a
question
few
for-
as we were going through it, and let me just recall those.
No problem.
I have a general question for everybody from the chat. They say, do all the guests have their own idea as to how we collectively can bring about full disclosure?
Oh my,
That's a good question.
that's a long question.
That's the beauty.
That's a major question.
Yeah.
Well, how about what would be, does anyone have any ideas of what would be a next positive step, incremental step towards disclosure? Would it be a public thing or a governmental thing, like
Declassification
Or-
of documents? Or...
Yeah, I mean, what do you predict maybe would be the next step that we might see in the next couple of years?
Can I try?
Yeah,
Go for it.
Well, I saw a precognitive event, an SSP Origins of the SSP conference happening in the summer of 2019 in Canada somewhere. And all of us were there, and we were doing roundtables, disclosing, doing origins of the SSP and that kind of stuff. A lot of hypnosis regression, healing, roundtables. So have a mega convention of all SSP assets coming together and disclosing all under one big roof. That's what I saw happening. And a certain famous, some famous, they've hosted SSP assets and whistleblowers in the past. They were hosting this thing.
Ah.
They were doing a documentary about it as well to be featured in recording all of us, all of our experiences, hypnosis, whatnot, and we were all under one roof. So I saw that as a future event happening. So I think having us together under one roof doing disclosure and having a lot of people come to the convention, whatever this thing was, and just listening to us disclose what we have to disclose in one big place.
So I need to get a passport.
Yes, Penny, you would need a passport. So that's what I saw as a future event. I don't know if that'll happen or not, but that would be cool to see that happen. Jason was there, Tony was there, Penny was there, I was there. Although I was wearing a wig, I didn't want my real self to be seen. I like to hide in wigs and pretend I'm somebody else in glasses because I can do public speaking and stuff, but I'm really self-conscious. So I was there in a wig and kind of like under Eliana, the Star Traveler persona. So, but it was so cool that happened, that I saw that event, and I'm like, well, why don't this company do this? Like, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. We all know. I think we all know who the company is, and I think that would be cool if that actually happened and they did
Yeah,
it.
you're talking about Reality Brief, right?
Of course, yeah.
Of course.
No. I'm talking about GT. GT.
G
That would be really nice.
G off, right?
No. Starts with something with Gaia.
No,
Gaia.
we all know what you're talking about. I was just cracking wise about a
Yeah.
mispronunciation I had earlier.
Well, it would be cool if it actually happened. I saw this thing happening, and like, that would be cool.
That would be cool.
Full disclosure with all these people there disclosing SSP assets, experiencers, all under one roof doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the tens of thousands worldwide.
Yeah, I'd watch
Worldwide.
And doing live streaming of it.
I was thinking it was more in the millions because I know the treaty between the Germans in Antarctica and the United States was that they had to provide 150,000 Americans for the German programs every year, starting from 1953 when Ike signed it, because I was one of those. So if you just look at 70 years of, well, I guess it would be closer to 60 years of 150,000 people, and that's just for the German programs. That doesn't count Solar Warden, it doesn't count the 2 mercenary companies, it doesn't count planetary corporations, it doesn't count the Russian program or the Chinese program or the Japanese or any of those other groups that are out there that nobody talks about.
Yeah, there are many, far more than.
You know, and then there's the Space Marines that Randy Kramer was in. And while I was out there, I was told I was U.S. Navy on loan to them. So how many millions are there?
Yep, that's a great question.
It's a lot of
very
people.
good question.
I have a question. I read somewhere that abduction experiences happen not just to random individuals, but to families. Like if a father has an abduction experience, his son or his daughter will have one, then their kids will have at least one in their lives. Would y'all happen to have any knowledge if there was an abduction experience somewhere in your family tree?
I'll take that one. My mother has altars.
Okay.
Obvious altars. So that means she has been through mind fracture, which means she has been abducted. I have 4 living siblings. They all have altars. All of them think I'm batshit. But all of them have altars. All of them are disassociatives. That proves they have been abducted and put through mind fracture. I don't know what else they have been used for. I have 3 children. 2 of them have told me they have memories of being in space.
Wow.
And I can tell you almost to the day when their personalities changed. My youngest, it was at 6 years old, because after that, for 3 years, he would go into rages where he would make his fists and hold them stiff at his side and scream at the top of his lungs for hours on end. And I would just pick him up and put him in his room and shut the door and say, when you can calm down, you're welcome to come out.
Yeah, they generally do follow along the lines of genetics because of the key indicators or the key factors that they're looking for, the things that they want or the things that are of value to them, and those are generally of genetic lineage.
Well, I have several of those going. I'm descended from a bastard child of Henry VIII, so I have royal genetics without privilege. And I had a Sephardi grandmother, and I had a Cherokee grandfather. So I have 3 of those lines, and my parents were put together on purpose to make that mix.
See, and that actually kind of goes into what me and Don were talking about a few nights ago, I believe it was. I came across this video on YouTube. They were talking about how people of a certain RH, pretty much basically saying that if you have RH negative blood, you actually are quite possibly have some kind of alien or extraterrestrial in you, because 15% of the world's population has RH negative blood, and the people who, there's only one part of the world where RH negative blood comes from, and that's the British Isles and Northern Europe. And with RH negative blood generally comes pale skin, light hair like blonde or red, blue or green eyes, stuff like this. And it's interesting that you say that you have the royal DNA from a king of England, because it kind of goes hand in hand with what me and Don were talking about the other night.
Well, I had 3 grandparents with RH negative blood, and I am the positive child of a negative mother who survived before the days of the Rogam shot.
Wow.
That's supposed to make me some superhuman survivor. And that's exactly what they're looking for in these programs.
Well, I'm O positive, but I have some extraterrestrial genetics in me from the hypnosis that I found out. That's why the programs took me, because I have extraterrestrial memories embedded in my cellular memory. And as far as I know, my parents are normal. They've never been abducted or bugged or anything. So it's just me that's been taken into the programs and abducted by ETs and had ET contact experiences. But the reason the programs took me is because of that ET genetics, Pleiadian and Andromedan and other stuff. But I know we're all supposed to have some reptilian DNA in us because they genetically engineered us, but I have 0 reptilian in my DNA from the hypnosis that I've done, questions that I've asked in the QHHT, because I had one, as Penny did, except I did 50 questions because I'm familiar with hypnosis, and I've done hypnosis on other people, and I apparently have 0 reptilian DNA in me.
That's far
I'm
out.
born
That's
on
pretty
this
far
planet.
out.
Yeah, all of us are supposed to have some reptilian DNA, but I don't. So that's pretty interesting for me, the genetics. I mostly have Pleiadian and Andromedan genetics in this lifetime.
Well, your aura's so bright I can see it through the camera.
And I'm blonde, and I have green eyes, and I have pale skin, and I come from Europe. I was born in Europe, so... But I have O positive blood. I don't have RH negative. And I have this on file because I know my blood type. When I had the hysterectomy, they did my blood type for free. So I'm O positive. It really depends on your genetics as well. If you have the ET genetics, they like to abduct you. You don't have to be RH negative.
Right now, it's just pretty much tendencies that tend to be followed. It's not set in stone or anything.
No.
Yeah.
No.
That was one of the things I'd found out over the last couple of years, was a distant relative of mine being Charlemagne. And that was also a surprise to me as well.
So you have the Merovingian blood.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yep.
Maybe.
Tomas messaged in.
If you go through the line from the Merovingians, you have an awful lot of bloodthirsty people who went through and destroyed entire cultures.
That's for sure. Yeah.
It's not necessarily a good thing to have.
Well, it's awesome that you know, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I had a relative that did the full check the family tree and trace it back to the eons to find out who, what, and where, and it was quite a surprise. So
I was the one that did that in my family.
Tomas just messaged in and says he in his case it traces back to his grandparents. His grandmother was an officer in the Air Force in the late 40s, and that would have made her one of the first female Air Force officers. Ask Penny what she thinks. I'm O negative.
Yeah, well, Tomas and I have already talked about that he's definitely multi-generational. So that's probably why his daughter was taken.
So, I guess, Mary, do you want to chime in with a question? You got something for somebody? I don't know if she can hear me now.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
I mean, Margaret.
Jesus, not Margaret again.
Come on.
Dawn.
You stop with
I'm
that.
the worst.
You like to tweak us, don't you?
No.
Or twerk us.
It's,
Sorry.
Donald, can't you play nice?
Donnie, play nice.
trying.
Da,
So,
da, da, da.
do you have a question for someone?
I really don't.
Okay.
Nothing, no.
Tony, did you think of anything?
Well, I was wondering who else, I guess the other two, Mary and Jason, what your blood types were, if you were O negative.
O positive.
Positive.
So that's 3 O positive. I'm an O negative. I'm an RH negative. And Penny, what's yours again?
O positive.
So it's 4. So everybody's an O, which is rare.
That is very rare. Yeah.
Is it So that right there, I mean, this happened in a few groups online. I think we had a group with, I don't, at one point there was like 80 people talking in a group, and it came up. This was a year or two ago, and pretty much most of the people were type O.
Mm-hmm.
So, you say the Rh negative stuff, keep that away from it, but it seems to be a common theme, on that genetic thing. And that, I don't talk about it much, but I do have my suspicions about my own children being taken. There was a lot of weirdness, and stuff that I kind of make note of, but, without seeing something physically happen, or without, somebody willingly want to participate and say, look, I remember this and this, and I want to talk about it all the time. You got to kind of let it go, you know what I mean? But I think that my children went too.
Yeah, it's a matter as a parent being vigilant for as much as you can, because there's only so much control that you can have with the types of programs.
Yeah, you're not going to stop them from taking anybody. There's nothing you're going to do to stop them, when they do. The other thing
you can't stop them.
The other thing is that's what the Monarch program really is about genetic memory. That, the monarch butterfly passed on coordinates and routes of its migration genetically to its offspring. So that's why they named it Monarch. So you got to think about the training, any kind of psychic training, combat training, any skill set. It tends to be in, how many sports stars do we see with their children grow up and make it into the NBA or the NFL?
Right.
Because which is an elite thing to do. It doesn't happen. But they're having these guys, their kids tend to make it. It happens enough to where it's a legitimate thing to say, because they're passing on that genetic memory of those skills. Those skill sets get passed on. So
that's something you see with musicians too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, right. Especially things like
Artists.
the entertainers. Look at actors. They're all people. And then for a long time through the feudal ages, the blacksmith. His son was a blacksmith, in carpentry. It all passed on, like our skill sets. We've all been like this for a long time, and just people don't see it for what it is. And
That's
so these programs why would they do anything different?
Right.
Well,
Right.
I have something to say about back to the kids being taken. There's someone I know well, and he's not public, so I'm not going to name him. But his most disturbing thing that's going on is he's got 2 little kids, and they've changed the way that they do the mind fracture and training. So his kids are being taken in their sleep, and then over the breakfast table they talk about secret spy school.
Whoa.
And his daughter was 5 when she came and put her arms around his neck and said, "Daddy, my teacher at secret spy school says that you're a bad man, but I don't believe him because I love you."
Wow.
Do you know how hard that is for a guy?
It's gotta be heartbreaking.
Yeah.
My heart just ached for him when he told me this, and it was just horrific.
Can I ask a question?
Go
This
for
is to all you guys, to the SSP experiencers assets. Do you guys collect any weapons by any chance?
Not that I will talk about online.
Smart.
I'll second that.
They all got stolen and lost in that boat accident.
Tragic fishing accident.
Yeah. Well,
I admit to a machete, but that's because in space I have this 1/2 meter long laser knife that is it's got a red blade, and it's this little thing about this big, looks silvery, and it has 2 buttons on it, and you push one and the blade comes out, and that thing, you can decapitate a person and it cauterizes it so you don't have blood everywhere.
Penny,
I love that knife.
are you secretly Darth Vader?
and
I have a question.
that would be me, the Darth Vader. I have an arsenal at home.
I was thinking Commander Shepard at least.
Yeah. All right. So somebody had a question. I didn't see who it was, but go for it.
No, we were talking earlier about some of the backgrounds, and one of the things that had come up previously was also lineage of German descent tends to be another factor that seems to play in it as well. And you go look at the number of people that are abducted in U.S. national parks, and the amount of German ancestry of those also mirrors the amount of German ancestry commonly found among those that are SSP experiencers or bats. So I was curious if they're among the other guests have any German lineage that they're aware of. I know I do. It goes back to my third great grandmother. But
My Jewish grandmother, they were from Alsace, which is sometimes France and sometimes Germany. So
Trade side's been
It's a
every
region.
40 years.
yeah. So they were slaves on an estate and had been for centuries until Napoleon gave them the boot, and they came to America then. So, and at that point they were speaking French and Yiddish.
It's an interesting combination.
British.
They were not literate in either language. They couldn't read or write, but they could speak both.
Mine is Polish, Ukrainian, Russian, and Jewish. So I don't know if Polish comes close to German or not, but
Pretty
Mm.
close, I guess.
Pretty close.
Poland
yeah,
is part
pretty
of
much.
Yeah, it's pretty close.
the empire. Yeah.
yeah, so I'm European, so I guess a little bit. Not directly German, but Polish.
Tony, any German?
I don't know for sure. This question is the first time that I've ever felt inspired to get the ancestry DNA test. You know what I mean? Because now that I think about it, I go, maybe that's neat to know that.
You guaranteed
My
you'll find
dad's side
something
is
interesting.
pretty.
Yeah.
I'm mostly Portuguese through my father's side, who is mostly Portuguese, and my mother's side is a mix of European stuff. I know a lot of our family came through England before they crossed over, and they're like French Canadian. My mother's family came through Canada down, and they're European. So I don't know. Maybe I'll check that out and get back to you on that. Maybe I'll do the swab and send it in.
Oh, but the FBI will get it too.
Yeah, there'll be little me's running around.
They've already
They've
got it.
got it.
They've already got it.
already got it.
Ever handled a penny?
What?
No, different kind of penny.
He said you ever handled a penny.
I've handled a penny. We used to have pennies in Canada, and now we don't.
Oh, they got rid of them, huh?
We still have pennies here.
Yeah, the Royal Mint.
Yeah, in
The
fact,
Royal Mint said no more. They're a waste of money to make money.
yeah, we still have pennies here. In fact, I get paid them.
I once bought a car in just pennies because we had this penny jar, and it was one of those 5-gallon water bottles, and it was half full of pennies. And this guy wanted, it was $150 for this old car. And I didn't have a car. And so I go through and I start rolling up the pennies to see if I had enough. And instead of going to the bank and turning them all in, I just gave him the pennies.
Oh man.
And he was like, "You are so full of shit."
That's awesome. Well, on that note, Thomas brings up Jewish is the common denominator. My grandmother is Hungarian. And on that note, to anybody I didn't say it to when it was going on, belated Happy Hanukkah.
Ah, there we go.
Hey.
Yep, Jewish. But no candelabra. The 8 candles.
Yeah, the menorah.
Hanukkah menorah. Yes.
Wouldn't it be great if that
Menorah.
trick lasted on, you get a pack of cigarettes, it lasts 8 days. You gotta take gas, it
Boy,
lasts 8
you get
days.
cancer. You get cancer from smoking, so don't buy those packs of cigars.
Very true.
I don't have a menorah, but I do the they're shot glasses, and I put the candles in them.
Yeah. I don't have a menorah, but the shot glasses come out, and it's no drinking.
I have an electric one that's kind of like a family heirloom. It was my grandma's.
Fancy electric?
Yeah.
Man, that's a way to move into the 19th century.
Cyber Judaism.
Yeah, it's really weird because Grandma taught me the holidays, and she taught me to eat clean. And she taught me about Bashert. and other than that, we were Christian because Daddy was Church of Christ. And so she was teaching tradition while Daddy was teaching me Church of Christ. And I still had in my head from the SP. And it was just all this woven together. And whenever that my memory was activated, I still remember all of that Christianity and Judaism, but it's like an intellectual pursuit. It's nothing with faith to it anymore. Lou described it as I came home and it was like a light switch had been flipped, and I no longer had faith, and I've had to really take a look at what do I base my ethics on.
Moral code.
And even though I no longer consider myself Christian, I still use the Sermon on the Mount as my ethical compass.
And here's a question: What is everybody's religion if they have one?
Yeah, I was curious about the same thing. You know, that's
Yeah.
in light of everything that you guys have been exposed to. I know it's a very personal thing, but
Well, before we get to answering that, I just want to say, because I forgot to do it at the beginning of the hour, we've got the grand prize. We are giving away this beautiful illustrated book, illustrated by VN Chronicler, who actually has done work for, I know at least Tony and Penny. I don't know if he's done work for any of you guys either. So the way to get in on this giveaway is you can send us a message at Facebook or at realitybrief@gmail.com. First person, time code that sends the message gets the book. Ooh. So guys, do it up now.
go,
Right.
go.
Sorry, had to do that before it got too late, because I almost forgot about it. I know he was probably like, hey, I thought you were giving away my book.
Didn't want to forget about that.
All right, so the religion thing. Whoever wants
I'm a
to take a
practicing
stab at
chaos
that
magician
first.
myself, which something that before we jump into that, Penny, it's kind of interesting when you find yourself going through a crisis of faith, and pretty much have given up on it and have almost embraced empiricism, but for some reason your magic still works.
My magic works so well that what I settled into is alchemy. When I read the Emerald Tablets, it was like they were written specifically to me for me to remember what I did in past lives.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is what I do. And no, it's not about turning lead into gold. It's about
Inner alchemy.
It's about the inner alchemy of finding your balance and embracing your shadow to the point that you become actually a whole person instead of constantly rejecting the parts of you that you don't like.
Mm-hmm.
Find a nice balance there.
Finally, cleave through all the BS and get to your own
So-
contact with your own personal higher self.
Yeah, you become your own savior.
Yep,
Very nice. I could get behind that.
that's pretty much with the same deal with chaos magic.
Yeah,
So,
that's much better in my opinion than waiting around for some blue chickens to come save you. So, I guess.
Next.
but yeah, what if that blue chicken is Abraxas? Just saying.
So, Get it back to the initial question. Penny, I guess you would consider yourself an alchemist then as your religion?
Yes.
Okay. So anybody else want to chime in on that?
Don't tell my hospital that because they won't treat you unless you're Christian.
Oh, well, that's just terrible.
Well, I'm similar to Penny. Shamanism and witchcraft, white light magic. You know, be with nature, the shamanism part, respect nature, respect people, respect the planet, do good, and the witchcraft is manifest from spiritual to physical, as above, so below, and do good, and with great power comes great responsibility with the psionics and the psychic ability and the magic. So it's white light magic. People think witchcraft, Satanism, you know,
right,
Luciferianism. Not true, not at all. There's light white magic and there's dark magic, and I only practice the light magic side of it. So, you know, witch and shaman, basically, because I'm trained in both, so, and I follow both paths. And I believe magic is real because I do magic. Penny does magic. Alchemy is magic. And just different energies of magic. And following the natural laws of the universe.
Yeah.
Oh, and it looks like we've got a winner on the book.
Got a winner on the book. Who is it?
We got a winner.
We got a winner.
Who's the winner?
They prefer to remain anonymous, but you may know them as Storymancer.
Oh, okay. All right. It's coming your way. Coming your way. Or is that the only one?
That's the only one?
No, you're not getting it.
Anonymous.
Congratulations, you got the book. So, anybody else want to take a stab at that question?
Excited. Be excited.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Any takers? What religion? Tony, Jason, Mary.
It's pretty personal.
No. I mean,
thank you, Penny and Ilana, for telling us and talking to us about that and sharing that with us.
Yes.
Are there any philosophers that you like in particular?
There are many. I'd say that each person's spiritual journey is, I think, something that's really individualized and
very unique.
And whether or not you have a belief in a Christ consciousness, or you're an alchemist, or you are manifesting things in each of your daily journeys. I mean, those are the things that we can either decide whether we're going to provide a giving light, or we're going to take on the service to self, in which we are the shadow side of things, in my opinion. And so, those journeys that each of us have, and unfortunately, we have paradigms and have had centuries of programming to overcome, and so many control mechanisms in which we have been are had thrown at us and programmed to us and presented to us for so long, and that each person's journey outside or around or within all those control paradigms are things that each person has to make. And at what stage do you say, okay, I'm going to do this, or what am I going to practice that? And I think that going about shining our own light and doing that in a way that is of benefit to others, benefits ourselves. And talking about knowing your shadow side, we all have them. I know I've got shadow sides, and it is a part of me. It is a part of the entire whole picture. And that's me. That's the whole me. That's not the me that's shining. That's not the me that I recognize that as a part, but that's not something that I want to manifest. And so I just think being able to share our light and how we go about, whether it's letting somebody in line from traffic or saying hello to somebody, just the way that we go about doing it, and shining that light in the way that we express every single day. I think your question earlier about how do we manifest disclosure, I think the more people that take into account shining light providing service to others in the way that they go about doing their everyday business, I think is probably going to be the fastest way to do it. I mean, there's lots of theories and ideas about what's going to be the best way to do it. I mean, we're already seeing disclosure. It's already been happening. I can trace it back to about 2010. The plan is re-releasing all the patents that have been locked away to R&D houses or education facilities so that they can reinvent these things. We're paying for them again, and they're coming out, and it is appearing as if they're organically coming out, but they've already been researched to the hilt. They've already been well-developed technologies.
I wonder how many of those are going to be John Quincy St. Clair patents that get re-released.
Yeah.
Gosh, you talk about I can name at least 4 of them that I've seen before.
Part of what we're hoping to do one of these days is build a remote viewing chamber, as described in his patent, and that in the personal chi amplifier, because Don knows how to build that.
That's right. That's right.
Well, guys, I really hate to do it, but we are midnight over here. A full 15 minutes past the 12-hour mark, guys. We did it!
We did it!
So,
yeah, 12 hours.
You know, I really need to go to bed, though.
It's about that time.
And I just want to say thank you guys for being a part of this, making it an awesome show. We really do feel honored and privileged to have this group of people. Everybody who's been on the show today. Thank you guys for being a part of this. You know, it was great. And
thank you for having us. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for having us, Don.
Thank you. What a great bunch.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's been fun. And thanks everybody for answering questions that Don let us just ask questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don!
We have a good time.
He made you guys do your own interview.
Yeah. See, you guys thought it was cool to me, but really it was just lazy.
He was just leaning back on the couch, taking a little mini nap.
Don,
Hey, I'll tell you what.
thank you for letting me help you organize this.
Not a problem, man. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Hopefully we can, it won't be a whole nother year until we do it again.
Yes, it will.
Next week.
Totally. All right, guys. We are going to jet, though. So thanks again for coming on, and we'll talk to you guys again soon. Bye-bye.
See you guys.
Bye, everyone.
Right on.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
We'll talk to you guys later soon.
Ciao.
Bye.
Later, y'all.